Abbeis von der Mesivta, und im Beruf ist als Dima, Mesivta, als Goldberg, Juma, der ganze Mesivta, und hat es wahrscheinlich zu den Jura, zu den Sol, werden nach die Mesivta. Der Goldberg Kippel hat Josua, und Baal hat Jura, von der Malten Rebbe, als es selber die Jura und Tarischer, oder noch ist geworden, eine von der Gerechten, den zwischen der Siede Chabad. Ich bin Chibote, der Herz von dem, der noch und gehen wollte, treffen, selbst sein wir und treffen es. Nachdem wir gelebt in Agami, aneinander in der Fuß, aneinander steht von Russland, hat gedacht, warten, sie gemusst warten, sie gewollt warten, bis wann ist der alte Rebbe ist angekommen in jenen Fuß, ist aber getroffen als Buhl, als Schaß, vielleicht noch gehen oder noch zu Fuß oder noch vorne, ist die Schaß angekommen in der Stadt, ist in der alte Rebbe gewesen von dort weggebracht. Bis wann ist mit Haken gewesen, als sie zueinander gefragt hat, wo der alte Rebbe wird sein, dort ist Akori, und hinzugekommen in jener Stadt, und auf Amerika hat sich mit keinem Durchschuss, was behalten in dem Gitter, was gewusst hat, dort wird der alte Rebbe sagen, die Rosse unter der Tisch, unter der Mieter, der Kajete wird. Und dazu gerät, als der Dämmel gewähnt, der Seder, Akashe, was gehabt, ist nicht der Erfung, gedreht noch, aber der alte Rebbe wird sein dort in Cheder, mit seinen Gewinnen, der Aris, geriefen und gehen, Magbuik, und der Wort werden gesagt behalten, und der Marzi, sein den Dober Kosche, die schwere Sache, was gehabt, in die Sichte Danach ist der alte Rebbe gekommen nach ihm, der Weise getroffen, der an der Rebbe, der Oholai nach mir kommt von dort an Rivkin. Bis wann ist mit der Mode Herr, der alte Rebbe sagt, als ein German hat Scheibe oder Kasche mit dem Gemüse in Rosh, in die siebte Eröffnung, darf früher sich allein meilig sein. Und es hat der Mieter gehört, weil er weg von ihm hätte nicht gesehen. Das ist aber auf dem gemacht, Hatamim. Reichen, als der Nord geworden kommen, und hier eine von den größten maskiven Monedien von dem alten Rebbe steht. Und der Schleike, das hat was Shimon sagt, dass die Glatte Spielapol mit Werte. Als sie gewähren Erfen, dass sie gewähren Meilig sein und Kuhl. Und das ist der Gufo, ein Roh in Avedas Hashem, wo sie massiv gewähren. Zu dem Tikkun und zu dem Deret, was man Krivoltarischer gedacht zu haben. Und immer so der Nord ist der Nord in der Hamhoge. Und die Hilfen und die Adviade erfleckt mit Deich sein. Auf Meilig sein und Lobschaften, jeder Ingen seinen, was mir gefühlt ist, bei der Krivoltarischer auf Sachmere, die mir gefühlt ist bei anderen von der Sidimarische.
Good Yom Tiv. The Shana Tova, the Limud Achsidis, the Darke Achsidis, the Kosevu, the Seichosemu. As we all know, until the Rebbe Rashab wrote the special letter that's printed in the beginning of Ayom Yom, we did not know that Yutas Kislev is Rosh Hashanah L'Chsidis. And in that letter, in addition to the Rebbe Rashab saying that it's Rosh Hashanah L'Chsidis, he writes, it's a Chag Asher Padah B'Sholem Nafshenu Be'er V'Chayis Nafshenu Nitnlam. And the Rebbe is ma'arich in this inyan of Er V'Chayis. So I want to open up by saying L'chaim to every bacher. First of all, big Yasher Koyach to Shir Gimel, who I know that when I was a bacher, and even when my friends were bachrim at this age, we never had such a yut as Kislev. And a big Yasher Koyach to all the bachrim who made it happen. And a big Yasher Koyach to unser Tayre Manal, the Skan Manal, for standing beside the bachrim to make such a beautiful Sudas Yom Tov. We know that the Alter Rebbe said that when he was reading in Tillim, Kapitel Nun Hey, he didn't finish to say the pasuk Padah B'Sholem, and he was already notified that he was going free. Tonight, we will begin the program where we will sing this Niggun of Padah B'Sholem.
Yeah.
In the Sicha of Yutas Kislev Tovshim and Beis that some of us watched yesterday, the Rebbe explains why we say the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim again. Can I have your help? The Rebbe says that even though every year we already know the Sipur B'Yetzias Mitzrayim, but nevertheless it's a mitzvah essay in our Torah to tell the story again, because through that a Yid lives it over and it gives him a chayis in the inyan of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Tonight we have the schus, and especially the Rebbe went on in that Farbrengen to say over details of the actual story. The famous question of Ayeko and the minister, and the Rebbe went on to tell over the story. Tonight we have the schus to have with us three bachrim who will share with us the kitzer, the story of Yutas Kislev. And the Rebbe says in actually Yutas Kislev Memhei that the pasuk Padah b'Shalom in Gemara, the Gemara says Kala Eisik b'Torah u'b'Gmilos Chasadim ki'ilu p'ta'ani li u'levanai mibeinu. Someone who is like the owner of a business. That Torah becomes his thing. He's a Baal Boss. The Bacher I'm about to call up is a Bacher, but is a Dug Mechaya, liegt in Inyanim from Darkech Siddhis. But even more, liegt in learning a Bacher Hatamim, Zalmen, Lipsker, to share with us the tale of the story of how the Rebbe was arrested.
Jump this. The story began so the Mesnagdim were always trying to make the Hasidim less, trying to make them smaller. So every opportunity that they had to get the Hasidim, they grabbed it. So one of the opportunities that they got was when the Vilna Gaon passed away. So it was Chol Hamoed Sukkos. There were Hasidim that didn't yet hear of the tragedy. So they were Farbrengen in the Sukkah, and the Mesnagdim interpreted it that they were celebrating the passing of the Gra. So there were a group of Mesnagdim that decided that they're going to stand up for the kavod of the Gra, and they were financed by a Mesnagid, which was a maskil that was acting like a Mesnagid, Yosef Palace, to make war against the Hasidim. And so there were a lot of stories where they were physically destroying things, belongings of Hasidim. One story is with where they went into a Chassid's winery and destroyed all of the barrels of wine and everything, and they forced him to close the shul in his house that they gave him permission to open. So Hasidim didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to deal with it. So they went to the local authorities and asked them for permission. They turned to them and said, we don't know what to do. So the local authorities forced the Mesnagdim to make new elections, and therefore there were a lot of Hasidim which were elected into the community council. So the Mesnagdim lost the local war. So they decided they're going to go fully against the Alter Rebbe. So they went to the Tsar. They sent a letter to the Tsar, and they wrote that the Alter Rebbe is trying to. First of all, he's giving money to the Turks, the money that he was sending to the Eretz Yisrael, and he's saying that Malchus is the lowest sfira. He doesn't have covet for the kingdom, and he's trying to make a new religion. He's He's changing the knives with Shlita. He's changing tefillas. He's taking out tefillas. And he's making the simple Yidden feel like they're special, so they shouldn't fear the government. They sent the investigators, and they found out that it's true that he's making the low Yidden, the simple Yidden feel special, and that they have a insane devotion to him. So on Chol Hamoed, the officers came to arrest the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe found out and escaped from the back door to overthink the situation. They came in and asked the Rebbetzin where he is, and she said she doesn't know. So one of the guards banged her on her left cheek and knocked out a tooth. And then they decided they're going to leave and come back after Yom Tov, and they left a few guards there. So in the Isru Chag, in the morning, the Alter Rebbe wrote a letter for the Chassidim that he said, now I understand what the Maggid told me, that I'm going to have to go through hard times. And he said, no matter what happens, don't fight with the Mesnagdim. And he said that the young Chassidim should listen to the older Chassidim. So by evening, the guards came back to arrest the Alter Rebbe. They took him in the black wagon. So right when they left, there were a group of the older Hasidim became the Vad, and they decided that they're going to devote their whole life, they're going to devote themselves fully to freeing the Alter Rebbe. So they divided themselves in three groups. One to try to free the Alter Rebbe, one to continue funding the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael, and for any cost that it's going to cost to free the Alter Rebbe. The third one was to go around and spread Chassidus.
Thank you very much, Shneur Zalmen. We will now continue the program with the Niggun. As we know that the Baal Shem Tov went to the Heichal of Mashiach, and he asked Mashiach, Eimosai, Ka'asi Mar, Master Mashiach, when are you coming? And Mashiach answered, L'she'afutzu, my Nesefafutzu. please find their seats. Everybody standing at the back. Hello, are you standing at the back? There are many times in Igris where the Rebbe is answering. When you read the Igris, you see that the Rebbe is answering people. What is the chiddush of our generation that we need chassidus? And the Rebbe addresses it in many, many letters. I'm not going to be meidig, but we have here the schutz to have one of our Ramim, who's a Yid, was liegt in Lernen, and Shmuel heilig lefanov, as geht sich ab mit seinen Talmidim, und sie geht dem mamish believe in nefesh that slache von jeder Talmid. Without any further ado, and to address this topic of the koyach von Chassidus, we'll call upon Harav Twersky. Please find your seats.
Wird angerufen, mit ein paar Namen. Der erste, der Rebbe Rashab, hat gegeben dem Namen, wo ich schon Chassidus. In anderer Orte wird angerufen, Chag Chagim. Ich da Farbrengen von Kislev, wo der alte Rebbe allein hat gesagt, als Kislev, das ist wie Yom Kippur. Wir können sich ausbeten, alles was mit darf. Also wir mit mir gebeten reden wegen Kirch von Chassidus. Und wir reden zu Tmimim. Einmal reden wir das Kislev auf Farbrengen mit Balabatim oder mit Mekurovim oder mit verschiedenen, aber es redet mit Tmimim, mit Tmimim, Bochen sie lernen in Rems Yeshive und nicht einmal Yeshive, alle Teure, wo das ist Altaras HaKodesh, ich gehe etwas anders. Ich will lieber so ein Wort von Rebbe. Der Rebbe hat sich gestellt mit der Kasche. Der Rebbe stellt sich auf eine Scheile, Lechuhure, wo sie da ruft, wo sie gewohnt hat, Kitru, Kislev. Kislev, die ganze Meise, was sie gewöhnt, mit Snagdi, mit der Irur, an keinen alten Rebben, als mit Malchus, ist doch alles gewöhnt, a Gzardin Milemailo. Fragt der Rebbe, Lechuhure, als doch schon gewöhnt, auch mit dem Kittrigen Zeit von Magid, mit der Moschel von Even Toi, war a Diamond. If I want to say in English one word, I want to tell you one thing. I talk to you. The guy what's talking now, to you I talking. You have what to listen. Maybe something going to take from this. Something. The Rebbe, maybe I'm going to talk in English a little, it's easier to understand. The Rebbe asked a shaila, Lechuhure, die Moschel von der alte Rebbe wegen Even HaMelech, he take the stone, the diamond, von the crown von the king, and you ground it, and you put this to save the Ben HaMelech. Lechuhure, he take down the Kitrug. Why you Kislev again? A new Kitrug. The Rebbe answer, because you Kislev, the whole Kitrug is done only because the Rebbe, but talking with the Gzeire, mit the Chassidus and Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, it's given the Kudes, the Nikude, and this is enough to save the Ben HaMelech. But the Alter Rebbe is Shitas Chadinim from Chabad, Barachove, Chassidus Barachove, Chassidus mit Ba'avone, that's to make the son from the king healthier, gesunder, besser, auf dies ein new Kitrug. Von dem ich war ein neuer Kitrug. Und auf dies hat gedikach der alte Rebbe himself asked the Baal Shem Tov und die Magid maybe to stop to say Chassidus in a Weg von Chabad. Und mit dem geämpft, because of Messias Nefesh, dass du Mamschein mehr und mehr und really Chassidus after Peterburg is much more. Mimele, the main thing what I want to say now, der Rebbe hat das gesagt, der Ingen von Ites Kislev gewesen, auf zu machen starker und gesunder den Ben HaMelech. Jetzt, einige Zeiten, in der Ingen von Libud Achsides, ist auf zu raten den Ben HaMelech. In our time, in our generation, you have new nisyones. Everyone know, you have big nisyones. Every kid was sit here, have nisyones. But a generation before you don't have these nisyones. In 2 generations before you don't have the nisyones. You have big nisyones. You have Chazal saying, Ze leuma ze osolikim. In Kedusha and in Klippe you have Ze leuma ze. You have a nefesh alikis and you have a nefesh abamis. What is the difference? Nefesh alikis is the nishome. Nefesh alikis fil ruchnies, Getlachkeit. Nefesh abamis won't gashmies. Von Taives. The problem is, at the Nefesh HaBahamis, you see it. You see Gashmias, you see Taives. It's open your eyes. In Nefesh HaLekis, need to misboinen, to think. Till your Nefesh HaLekis misgabo of Nefesh HaBahamis. In our time, to be misgabo of the Nefesh HaBahamis is not easy. Why? Today you have big nisyones, and I want to say it, b'mizok Shema Mefurash, he's talking about the problem from the Kelim Shoinim. He have put, the companies putting billions of dollars in the technology. Billions of dollars, not millions, no billions of dollars, to make more interesting, to put the people more inside. And more inside. Die Yeshiva sef takones aher, takones ahin. Aber jeva Yitzerore, jeva Nefesh HaBahamis, it's very hard. Kids know, it's very hard. Even you have takones, you have this, it's very hard. Your friend showing you this, and your friend, the other friend showing you this, you yourself have your own Nefesh HaBahamis. Are you going to survive such a Yitzhorah? Either Rabbi Yehuda Kohen in the time from Alten Rebbe saying, Tanya is Torah against the old Magefe what's going to be before Moshiach. What is special? Why Tanya the ganze Koyach? Because the Alter Rebbe in Tanya bring you koiches atzmim. You megale your own koiches, pnimies. You everything, all taives is outside. It's not koyach, your own koyach, your deep connection to Kodesh Baruch Hu. When Habochur learned Chassidus, when you live with Chassidus, you live different, you think different. Der Alter Rebbe write in Tanya, in the Akdome, whatever, every shaila what you're going to have, look in Sefer, look in Tanya. Lechure, you have so many shailas you don't find in Tanya. All the problems from our generation, the Alter Rebbe don't write in Tanya. How are you going to save these problems? No, if you learn Tanya, if you learn Chassidus, you megale you etzem miskashres for you HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You megale you neshome. Koiches atzmim. You etzem miskashres to you HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When you megale this etzem miskashres, that's the Torahs against the Magefe from our generation. Even you have big nisyones. Zeluma ze osolikim. Such nisyon is the only thing to save Finde alles Schönes ist lernen Chsides. Und befragt Limud Tanya. You learn Tanya Perik. Don't learn only for the test. Learn because that is your biggest koyach to save you. That's the biggest koyach to megale you etzem is kashas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You deep is kashas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Aid is a chelik in the kaimi mal mamish. You know, and if you megale this, that's against billions of dollars, you're more stronger. Because Haidi be'etzem starke from all, everything. No, that's the only way. And that's what Rabbi Yudalei Bakoin right. Tanya is a ktoires, when you have a mageife, you have ktoires to save the mageife. And that's in Limud Achsides. You learn the sichas from Rebbe, the mamorim from Rebbe. And that's the only thing what he can do to save. That's a Machzedek hat gesagt, you have 3 Yom Tovim. You have 3 Yom Tovim, it's not in the Torah. The Rabbono, Hanukkah, Purim, and Yutis Kislev. Purim, he given Ashmid Lar Gelabed to kill all the Jewish people. That's a Nes for Israel, for Eden. Hanukkah, Ilashkichom Torosecho, is a Nes for the Torah. Yutis Kislev is a Nes for Ebersten. All Chassidus came to Megala the Ein Noimel Vado. Everyone to feel Ein Noimel Vado is only the Eibishter. And when you want take away Chassidus, open in the Ebersten. You know, Amisnaged once have a dream. He said to his wife, I'm very sad. What happens? I think it's the last day of my life. Why? I have in my Cholem, I see the Eibishter in Cholem. His wife telling him, sure, you think about him in day, because you have a dream. So never 4 years I don't think about him. I have a time to think about him, I need to learn to daven, I need busy all day. Chassidus hat reingebringt dem Ebersten. Ein Neumel Vadoi. You deep connection like jeden Tag zum Ebersten, das ist Chassidus. Israel or reise kutshubricha kuluchat. And that's what the Alter Rebbe himself, in the first year after Yutis Kislev, the Alter Rebbe himself say a maimer. And he say, and he connect is Gehule Boruch she'osu nisim lavuseinu bayom yimei bizman hazeh. Zog the Alter Rebbe. Boruch she'osu nisim lavuseinu ist zum Magid und zum Baal Shem Tov. Bayom yimei mis Chanukah und Purim. Bizman hazeh is Yutis Kislev. Mimele the Alter Rebbe connect this all 3 Yom Tovim. Really, this all 3 Yom Tovim is really to megale the etzem is kashos na'in zum Ebersten. In other way. Und der Rebbe in Farbrengen saying, because the Alter Rebbe connected to Hanukkah, and as if Hanukkah is never same tale in Loilom, is Yutis Kislev going to stay a Yom Tov forever. Und is going to stay a Yom Tov, lo'osid lo v'echet b'bias HaMoshiach. Der Eibishter der Lolofen, am Noltag, als wie der Alter Rebbe hat gesagt, die alle, wo sie sich bestattet, mein Simche, will ich herausnehmen, min ha-Meitzer al-Amerchaft. Everyone have his own mitzorim, everyone have his own inyonim, but they need help. Hashem help everyone in all the good things, und to herausgeben ha-Meitzer al-Amerchaft in all the good things, in Gashmers und Ruchnis.
Goldberg. Now continue with the Megillas Yutes Kislev. Right when the Alter Rebbe was arrested, the Alter Rebbe's brother-in-law, Rabbi Yisrael, was there, and he asked the Alter Rebbe if there's anything that they should do. Alter Rebbe said two things. Number one, you should go right away. Don't change your clothes. Don't go home to get your passport. Go straight to Peterburg. Number two, send the shliach to Rebbe Yitzchak Bardichev to write opinion. The shliach left. He went to Peterburg, Rebbe Yisrael, and the shliach went to Rebbe Yitzchak Bardichev, but he forgot the Alter Rebbe's mother's name. He didn't have the Alter Rebbe's mother's name, and right away he told Rebbe Leivik. He told Rebbe Leivik what happened. Rebbe Yitzchak Bardichev fell on the floor and he started to roll. Tza'aka mara ugdoila. The first question that Rebbe Yitzchak Bardichev asked was the Alter Rebbe tarud? So to say, did the Alter Rebbe lose himself or lose his composure? And the shliach said, yes, but only bepnimius, not only bechitzonius, not bepnimius. How does he know? Because the Alter Rebbe right away took his talis and tefillin, but he forgot his slippers. So bepnimius, he didn't lose himself. And Rebbe Yitzchak Bardichev finished and he said, their litvak cooked good. Their litvak cooked good, that he still held sich stark bepnimius. And the story finishes that Rebbe Yitzchak Bardichev opened up the Parshas Timecodes, where it says he has Shever b'Mitzrayim, and Shever is the Rosh Tevis, Schnuer Zalmen ben Rivkin, which was used in the pidyon. The Alter Rebbe remembered his talis and tefillin, but the slippers he forgot. I have the schus to have this next Talmud who's going to continue the Megillas Yutes Kislev in our class. Habochur was bepnimius, allemol gedenkt the talis und tefillin. Nicht the talis, aber the tefillin. The slipper is meile the gashmius. It's ov alabriyes. Liegt in the richtige inyanim. Mifzoyim hat achayis. In learning hat achayis. Without any further ado, I would like to call up a herrliche Dugmachaya Hatamim, Yanky, Strasberg, to talk about who will address us during the imprisonment, during the arrest.
Diante. First of all, I want to start off with Chaim L'Bracha. So now I'm gonna speak about when the Alter Rebbe was actually in prison. So the first arrest, the Alter Rebbe was arrested. So right when the Alter Rebbe was arrested, right when the soldiers took him, he made a couple arrangements. First of all, he sent the shliach to the Bardichever to send a pidyon, and he asked when the shliach went to the Bardichever, he forgot the Alter Rebbe's mother's name. So the Bardichever opened up a chumash and he saw Vayirak Yaakov ki Shever b'Mitzrayim, and he saw Shever. He said is Schnuer Zalmen ben Rivkin. So he said, and he gave the pidyon. And the Alter Rebbe also said that first 10 Chassidim certain 10 Chassidim, they're not allowed to go to Peterburg, because if they'd go to Peterburg, they'd burn down the whole city. And he said that's not the way that we're meant to do it. And he also told his brother-in-law, Rabbi Kazik, to go dressed as he was to Peterburg, and he was dressed like a foreigner, and he wasn't a Russian citizen, so he needed a visa. But he didn't have a visa, so he just borrowed someone else's. And when he got to Peterburg, what's his name? So the Mordechai helped him, and he basically told him to just take a wagon and ride around the city. Also, when the Alter Rebbe was arrested, the Chassidim made 3 committees. One was to help the Alter Rebbe's family. Second one was to make sure to spread Chassidus, and the third one was to try getting the Alter Rebbe out of jail. And they need a lot of money, so they said every chassid has to write down all his belongings he had. Not that they were going to take anything from them, but if they need, they know what they need. They know what they have. There are also a lot of chassidim. They fasted for Mondays and Thursdays, or some chassidim that fasted 6 days a week, and on Shabbos they ate. There was one chassid that he was an older chassid. He fasted. He was fasting 6 days a week. Right before the Alter Rebbe got released, he passed away, and he came to the Chassidim in a dream. The Chassidim of his town, they were far. They didn't know that the Alter Rebbe was released there. He told them that the Alter Rebbe was released, and make sure when you hear the news to come to my kever and say l'chaim. So the Alter Rebbe was taken to jail, and they didn't really know who the Alter Rebbe was. So they constantly were sending ministers to speak to him and to try to get to know who he was. And one of these ministers was the Minister of Culture. The famous story of Ayeka, that the Minister of Culture asked him, why is Hashem saying Ayeka when he doesn't know? So he answered the Pshat of Rashi that not to scare Adam. Then he said, I know the Pshat of Rashi, and so he said that it's trying to tell you that you're in this situation, you're this and this age. He said the exact age of the minister. What are you doing? Are you doing what you're meant to do in this world? So the Alter Rebbe had he was having a very strong kind of he was in jail instead of the Baal Shem Tov, because if not, then the Baal Shem Tov would have to be in jail. And Bechlal, he was able to learn all day. He didn't need any Sfarim. And the Alter Rebbe even had Shabbos clothes. It says that before he went to jail, he took a handkerchief, and that's what his Shabbos clothes were. So he was getting close to Klei Nefesh. And that story, Ayeka, brought him back down, reminding him that what he has to do in this world, and that he has to make a dir b'tachtenim. So this one time the Alter Rebbe didn't eat. And the government thought that he was going on a hunger strike because he was a political prisoner, and he was trying to prove a point. So they didn't believe him. They asked him why you don't want to eat. He said kosher, but they didn't believe him. So they tried forcing food down his throat. The Alter Rebbe was resisting, and this minister was passing by, and he's like, well, what's going on? So the Alter Rebbe said, I'm not eating kosher. But he told him that's not something you have to go al Kiddush Hashem for. You're not going to get Elam Haba if you do this. He said, I don't care if I'm not getting Elam Haba. I'm not eating today. So this guy was a very philosophical guy. He was like, Shkayach for because you gave me so much wisdom, I want to pay you back. So he tells him, okay, I'll get you kosher food. So the Alter Rebbe told him, there's one problem. I didn't eat for a while. I will not be able to eat. Even if I'm going to need something very smooth, something like applesauce. So Mordechai Lepler was a gvir, and all the ministers, they respected him because he had your shemaim, and you're able to tell it. So he right away, his first choice was to go to Mordechai Lepler. So he goes to Mordechai Lepler, and Mordechai Lepler is, obviously, we know that the Alter Rebbe was in jail, so he thought maybe this Alter Rebbe. So he put a letter asking who it was, and the Alter Rebbe answered back, Shnei Zalmen ben Rivka, and you should send someone right away straight to where the Misnagdim were to figure out what's going on. So now, while they were interrogating the Alter Rebbe, they asked him 22 questions. Some of them we know, some of them we don't. Some of the answers we know, some of them we don't know. So basically these are the questions. Like first couple questions. Are you a chassid of the Baal Shem Tov? The Alter Rebbe said if he would have said no, they would have let him out right away. But he didn't want chas v'shalom disconnect himself from the Baal Shem Tov. And then the second question they asked: why did you change the nusach of tefillah? Why did you change the Shlita knives? Why did Chassidim daven long when they're being mevatel time from learning? So he answered that there's neshamas that are meant for davening, there's neshamas that are meant for learning. Then they got to a question where they asked the Alter Rebbe, why did he say that Malchus is the lowest bechina? So he said this is a little bit more complicating, and I'm going to have to write it down. So the Alter Rebbe wrote it down at length, and they needed to get it interpreted. So they sent it to 3 goyim, and one of the goyim lived in Vilna. One of these. So the chassid that the Alter Rebbe sent to Vilna, he heard about this letter, and he heard that the Misnagdim wanted to go to this guy and pay him off so he should change it for what they want. And when he heard it, he went to this guy and he starts pleading to him please write the truth and don't lie. So he said, I wouldn't lie, because if I would lie, then there's other two people writing, and then they realize I'm lying, and also I wouldn't start up with such a holy Jew. So he said, but if you don't trust me, you could come tomorrow. The Misnagdim said they're going to meet me tomorrow. You could come hide in the closet while I'm talking, and you'll see that. So the next day, the chassid comes, he hides in the closet. The Misnagdim come, they pay him, they give him a bribe. The guy accepts the bribe. They promise him you're going to have Gan Eden. They promise him. The Misnagdim leave. And the chassid comes out, he's crying, you promised me, and why you... So he says, don't worry, I'm going to write 2, why not make some money? He said, I'm going to write 2, one for you, for the Misnagdim, one for you. So he's like, yeah, but how do I know which one you're actually going to give? He said, if you really don't trust me, first of all, why would I tell you to come today? And second of all, if you really don't trust me, you could take it and put it in the mailbox yourself. So he sent it, and he sent it in the mailbox, and then after they got the answers, so they had all the questions and answers. The judges really liked it. They sent it up to the Senate, and it went up and everybody liked it, and the Alter Rebbe was released. And then, so that was the first arrest. The second arrest, the second arrest was more of the Alter Rebbe wasn't treated that much as a prisoner. He was put he was in more like a house arrest, and the Alter Rebbe said that, but the only thing the Alter Rebbe said that the second arrest was a lot bigger of a nest than the first arrest, because the first arrest was based off complete lies. The second arrest had some truth to it, like the question that they asked the Alter Rebbe by the second arrest, that the Chassidim, it's all Mesiras Nefesh and Bittul. Mesiras Nefesh is a stira to again, if you're having Mesiras Nefesh for Hashem, then you're not having Mesiras Nefesh, then you're against the government, and if you have Bittul, then you can't work properly. So the Alter Rebbe went to explain to them at length how Mesiras Nefesh could also mean for the king's basar v'dam, din the malchus dina, and also bittul doesn't mean that you can't work. It means that you shouldn't be running after gash mistik zach. So the way the Alter Rebbe got released the second time is that there was a yid called Rebbe Shklaver, and he was connected in the court by the king, and then the king died, and there was a new king. So Rebbe Shklaver went over to the Alter Rebbe and said that I'll arrange that you get released on condition that after you get released, you go to three goyim. So 3 mistake shagainim. So he said, so Alter Rebbe said, no problem. So what did he do? He went, the first day of the king, usually the first paper that he'll get, he'll probably do Barachamim. So he arranged that the first paper should be of the Alter Rebbe. So the king saw it and he did Barachamim, and the king wasn't that big of a fool. He realized that it was done on purpose, but he said, even if it was done, it would have been done later, I still would have let the guy out. Chaim Levracha, L'Shem Teva, Teres Chassidus, V'Dachei Chassidus.
Gracie and Shekoyach, Yanky, Shego Mechael, Oholai, Limud Chassidus, B'Darkei Chassidus. Before we call up the next speaker, I think it's important to single out a special thank you, and that is that Baruch Hashem, this year we have the schus to have with us Rabbi Oster, who works Leilos Kayamim to bring a Chassidish Chayes into the yeshiva, and everything you see over here would not have happened without Rabbi Oster and many other things and campaigns for the Chassidish Yom of the Pagris. The Eibushes older mentioned Elef Pamim Kacha, Agresin Yashikoyach Rabbi Oster. Our guest speaker tonight is a special guest who is known in Crown Heights, a Yid that's Marbitz Torah and gives Shiurim Barabim. As we know, the special inyan that the Rebbe writes in many, many Igris about giving Shiurim Torah Barabim, a Yid was kochzich in Chinuch. Without any further ado, and I'm sure everybody, now that there's an extra dose of Farbrengen that just came out, I'm sure everybody will give him their undivided attention. Harav Mordechai Lipsker. Leave the floor.
Kavana Pnimis of the banana? Is that Good Yamtiv. Yanky, who just was saying the story of the Alter Rebbe in prison, he reminded me of my days here in Oliteira, Mesivta. I taught here like 10, 12 years ago. And before Yutas Kislev, I had to deal with the Bachurim that if they would learn what we had to learn the last few minutes, I would tell them the story of Yutas Kislev in detail. So when I got to that part that you just talked about, where the Alter Rebbe sent a spy to Vilna. So one of the Bachurim, he's like, wasn't getting it. The Alter Rebbe sent a chassid to be a spy in Vilna by the Misnagdim. I'm like, what don't you get? He says, if a chassid goes to Vilna, everyone's going to know he's a chassid. He's going to look so different than the Misnagdim. The Misnagdim don't have beard. They don't go with the black hat. Everyone's going to know who the chassid is. This guy today is a Chassidish Malamed in Oliteira, but the pshit is of an Oliteira Bachur. So the best place to be at his Kislev is amongst Bachurim. Rabbi Zalmen thinks that I'm doing him a favor to come here. He's doing me a favor to be led into this fortress of Bachurim, Oliteira Nix, on Yutas Kislev, the best place to be. One of the reasons why that's true is that the Mendel Harav was a student of the Mezitcha Magid, the oldest student. So he used to travel a lot, and then he had a special a wagon driver that would take him wherever he wanted to go. Personal chauffeur. Then one day he stopped traveling. So the chauffeur, this Balagola, didn't have parnasa anymore. So he sold his horse and he bought a cow. That way he could have at least some parnasa from the cow. A few months went by, and one day the Mendel Harav tells him, I need to go somewhere. So the Balagola says, I don't have a horse. He says, okay, sell your cow and buy a horse. So he sells his cow, he buys a horse, he gets a wagon, and he comes to pick up the mendel Hadakim. And they start traveling. They get to a mountain, they climb up the whole mountain, they get to the top of the mountain, and typically when you're going down a mountain with the horse and buggy, so you want that the horse should go slowly, so it's safe. The mendel Hadakim tells him, when you get to the top of the mountain, whip the horses and don't stop whipping them until they get down to the bottom of the mountain. Don't stop whipping. It's Balagola. It's his first day on the job for who knows how long. It's a brand new horse. He borrowed the wagon, and he's going to go down this hill, and he's going to whip the horse. Who knows who's going to come out alive? The horse is going to live, if the wagon is going to survive. But the Rebbe, he's whipping and whipping and whipping. They go down the mountain, they go down, and what do you know? They come to the bottom of the mountain so fast, he couldn't control the horses anymore, that they smashed right into a big villa, a big house, right over there at the bottom of the mountain. They smashed into the house. As they trach straight through the glass, and it was a house of a big Padah. You could imagine the Padah came outside. He was more red than, and he comes out with a big rifle, and he puts the rifle straight into the face of the Balagola. He's going to blow his brains out. The Balagola says, no, it wasn't me, it was him. He's the boss. He tells me what to do. So the Padah goes to this Balagola, not to the Balagola, to the mendel Hadakim, and he points the gun at him. Then already, he tried to pull the trigger, he couldn't. He froze, and then he went back like a little puppy. He went right back into his house, and the mendel Hadakim and the Balagola drove off. They finally get to safety, and the mendel turns to the Balagola and he says, "Chutzpah, you're the one who whipped the horses down the mountain. He comes out with a gun and he sends them to me. The Balagola says, I'm the chutzpah Yanky. You're the one who told me to do it. So I made a very simple cheshbon. If you're a Rebbe, then a bullet won't be able to hit you. If you're not a Rebbe, then you deserve it." Does this story remind you of any other story? One of you guys who was it? Said the story of Shimon. The way Chassidim would say the story of Reb Shimon Munkis, they said it was like this. I read in two Sfarim. Reb Peretz Mochkin said it this way, and Reb Yudol Chittik said it this way. Reb Shimon, when the Alter Rebbe wanted to know if he should go with the soldiers, so Reb Shimon Munkis told him this story. And then he told Alter Rebbe, if you're a Rebbe, a bullet won't be able to harm you. So go. If you're not a Rebbe, then who gave you the right to take away Elam Hazeh from so many thousands of Yidden? The question, every year I have the same question. Every year we come up with new answers. Last night we had a Farbrengen East Flatbush. Came up with two answers, but that's Farbrengen. But I'm going to ask the question, I think there's another answer. When you come to Mesivta, you think of another answer. The question is, what did the Alter Rebbe do more than any other gadol before him to take away Tainug and Elam Hazeh? There's a mitzvah Kadeshim Tiyu, there's Musar Sfarim say not to do this, not to do that. What did the Alter Rebbe do different? And l'chura, the answer is in whipping the horse. The Alter Rebbe talks about the horse. Every Yid has an nefesh Bahamas. And most other Sfarim without Tanya, without Chassidus, they're going to say you have a nefesh Bahamas, you have a Yetzer Hara. You have to strangle it, you have to kill it, you have to ignore it, you have to starve it. Somehow get rid of your Yetzer Hara. Kill your Yetzer Hara. The Alter Rebbe's derech is, he says you have a Yetzer Hara, you have a strong animal, you have a strong nefesh Bahamas. Whip the nefesh Bahamas, whip the horse that it should start working for you. So you come to Holy Torah, and see, when you go to the older guys, if I bring you to Kislev, they're more meyushiv maybe, more relaxed. The Shlomo Chaim used to say, when you see the older Chassidim, they're sitting up more relaxed and they're calm and meyushiv. You think it's because they're more mature, they're more thoughtful. He said it's very posh. You go to a farm and you're going to see that the older cows and the older goats, they're more calm. The young ones are jumping up and down. They're jumping. He says, why? Because the fat ones, The old ones, they got so fat, they got so grub over the years of eating too much, they can't jump anymore. The young ones have a lot of energy. So he said the Bachurim are like that. The elder Chassidim just had no energy left because they're angestoppt for who knows how many years. They have no keiches to jump anymore. The young Bachurim have a lot of energy. So the Nefesh of Bahamas in the Alter Rebbe's book is a very good Nefesh. The Alter Rebbe talks about Nefesh of Bahamas first, Perek Aleph, then he comes to the Nefesh Elikus. Okay, but that I wasn't going to say. That I just thought of sitting over here watching all the struggles between the Nefesh Elikus and Nefesh of Bahamas, so that occurred to me over here. If you could accept it, you could accept it. If not, take it. It's also good. The Alter Rebbe had many visitors, interesting visitors in when he was there. They say one of the visitors, they knew the Alter Rebbe is a genius. And he knows everything. So one of them brought to the Alter Rebbe a map of the United States of America. Now, I'm not even sure if the states of America were united then. We have to... I'll tell you, how do I know the map of the United States of America? I learned it sitting right over there. When Oholai Zal was still in this building, so I had a notebook to take notes of shiurim. In the back of the notebook, there was a map of the United States. That's how I know the map of the United States of America. So they brought a map of America. America was just established, I guess, 25 years before. They brought Alter Rebbe the map, and they said, "What do you think of this map?" So the Alter Rebbe looked at it, and they said, "There's a mistake." And he showed them the mistake. He said, "I think it was water." He said, "This water doesn't belong over here. It's a mistake." So they were laughing. A mistake. Alter Rebbe is going to tell us what's a mistake in a map. Anyhow, they went back. They studied the map again, and they did it. And they found out Alter Rebbe was right. It was a mistake. So they came back to Alter Rebbe, and they said, "How did you know? You're here in Russia. You never stepped foot in America." So he said, "It's very pashut. In the bays." Says in, I think, in the bays of Bereshis, the Eibishter put in a map of the whole world. If you know how to read the bays of Bereshis, then you have a map of the whole world. That's where I know my map from. My map doesn't have mistakes. It's interesting that in Torah you have everything. In Torah you have everything. There's a... There's a sefer called Seder Hadoides. He writes the hundreds of years or thousands of years of Yiddish history. So when it comes to the Rebbe mi Paris, he was one of the Balei HaTosfos. Rebbe from Paris. Rebbe mi Paris. Now this Rebbe mi Paris had a lot of people, goyim, who couldn't stand the Yidden as usual, and they used to come to his house to bother him. So he created a mechanism, and by his desk where he would sit and learn, he had a button that he would push. And by the front door, when people would come to the door, if they didn't belong coming to his house, he would push that button, and a trap door would open in front of the house, and they would fall in. And then he would push the button again, and the bottom of the trap door would jump up, and they would leave. They would go. They would run away. And that way he was able to learn in peace. Now the king of France heard about this Rebbe mi Paris, that he has a bunch of strange koiches, and he heard that he's maybe even a sorcerer, that's a man witch, and because he heard that this Rebbe mi Paris has a lamp that doesn't need oil. He said, "I need to see this. How do you have a lamp that doesn't need oil?" This is the Balei HaTosfos. This is like 800 years ago, more. What 800 years ago? 1,000 years ago. So one day the king came to the Rebbe mi Paris' house, dressed up like a simple person, came to the front door, and he knocked on the door. The Rebbe mi Paris opened the door for him, and he gave him cover like you're supposed to give to a king. So the king said, "How do you know why are you giving me cover like a king? How do you know I'm the king?" So he said, "I'll tell you why, because I have this mechanism. I push buttons, and the door is supposed to drop, and by you, the button came flying right back at me. I knew you must be something special." So the king sat down with him, and they're talking, and he says, I heard about this lamp that you have, this magical lamp. How do you do the magic?" So he said, "It's not magic. I have Talmidim, we sit and learn Torah. We want to learn Torah by night also. We can't afford the oil, so I created this thing. It doesn't need oil, so it's basically free. So he said, how do you do this? So he told him, in the Torah, we learned how to get koiches out of the earth. And with these, what we figured out, certain like energies you can take out of the earth, I created this lamp. He said, so why don't we, let's market this, let's make money. He said, no, the world is not ready. I can't give this out. He basically had some kind of electricity about 1,000 years ago, and he learned how to do it from the Torah. You have there was another one of the Achreinim, the Shvus Yaakov. He says he created to be able to communicate with someone on the other side of town. He created basically a telephone where they could talk into one keli, he says, and someone on the other side of town could hear what he's talking about. So in Torah you have everything. Just have to know where to look, how to look. But in Chassidus, there's something that the Alter Rebbe gives us in Chassidus, which is very hard to find anywhere else. You won't find it anywhere else. And that is about ourselves. Instead of just learning about the world, etc., and not just learning about the Eibishter. When you learn about the Esses Svidis, when you learn about Seder Shtalshus, you're learning also about yourself. Some people say young teenagers are immature. I don't say that. No. What's interesting is you find Bachurim who learn Chassidus, even if you'll call them the immature ones, Bachurim who learn Chassidus are actually more mature than Bachurim who don't. It's a reality. You could visit yeshivas who have no Chassidus, and it's sometimes you can't have certain conversations with them that with another Bachur who's learning basic Chassidus, he just has a certain depth that he gets from Chassidus. Rabbi Groner told me, I heard that he doesn't eat ice cream, Rabbi Label Groner. So I asked him once if it's true, if there's a story behind it. So he told me, yeah. And the story is, he said Itaka doesn't eat ice cream. And the story is when he was learning in yeshiva here in Crown Heights, yeshiva then was in 770. And Rabbi Zalmen Garari was their Magid Shir. And it was during the Holocaust. I forget the years correct, yeah. And one day Rabbi Garari comes into their classroom and he says, I was just coming from the Rebbe, from the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he said, Hayois, that in Europe there are the Yidden are suffering and Yiddish kids are being killed. So there's something, we should do something for them. And therefore the Rebbe is asking, a bunch of real American New York boys, says the Rebbe is asking you if for the next week you could not eat candy, not eat ice cream, and not go to the movies. In those days, the movies wasn't so, wasn't so upgefrekt for these kids. Some of them came from not such frum homes. Frierdiker Rebbe said, for 1 week, I'm asking you not to do those 3 things. Fine. A week went by, and Rabbi Garari came back to them and with a piece of paper. It was a chart that the Frierdiker Rebbe himself made for each bacher to fill out. Over the past week, for each day of the week, how did you do with the treat, with the candies, with the candy and ice cream, and the movies? How well did you do over the past week? They gave the results into the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he was very pleased, and he said, could you do it for another week? So they did it for another week, and this went on for a few months, week after week after week, to do it for the kids in Europe. And he said he thinks that anyone who was in the class then that was never able to touch these things again afterwards. These kids were little kids, what people would call immature, and yet the Frierdiker Rebbe understood that these kids, they're shaykh to feel for another Yid. Another Yid is on the other side of the world. They're shaykh to feel for another Yid that it's a pasnish to eat ice cream and eat candy if someone else is hurting. That everyone spoke by you see in this week's parsha Yosef HaTzadik, it says when he was misalsel beside, he was making himself look good in the mirror, and that's when the Eibishter sent him even more tzadas, more nisyonos. Why? Because his father was suffering. Yosef should have felt that. It says, even a young bacher, the Torah Chassidus, the Rabbeim have a trust in a young bacher that he could feel for somebody else. So, there was the Rebbe Rashab said that he had two visitors. One day he said he had two visitors. The Rebbe Marash. One of them made him very happy. One of them made him very sad. The one who made him very happy was Rebbe Eliabella. Rebbe Eliabella came into Yechidus and he was a businessman. And he asked. The Rebbe Marash asked him, how are things? He said, Baruch Hashem. But then he started crying. And he said, things are good by me, but there's a Rabbi Yosef in our town who's not doing well. He's not doing well in Parnasa. Whatever he does, flops. He fails. We raised money, tried to buy him a horse. The horse died, and the wagon. But whatever we try is not working. And he started crying. He said, Rebbe, give him a bracha. So the Rebbe Marash, and he said, what could I do for him? What could I do for him? So the Rebbe Marash said, you could do a lot. Just by the fact that you're feeling for him, you're already doing so much. Just to feel for another Yid. And then the Rebbe Marash took out a coin and he said, here, I want to give you this money because I want to be a partner in your business. And then he left. The Rebbe Marash said later to the Rebbe Rashab, if I would have given in to my Nefesh Elikis, I had a taiva from my Nefesh, I would have given him a kush. That's how moved the Rebbe Marash was from his Avos Yisrael. And who was the guest that made the Rebbe Marash sad? So he was a mashpia from a very chashuv city, and he learned Torah with the younger light. He was like the Rosh Koilo. And the Rebbe Marash said, how are things going over there? So he gave him a report how they're learning it. Then the Rebbe Marash said, what about Midas Tevis? Chassidus and Midas Tevis work on their character, Avos Yisrael. So the Rebbe, they're from a bunch of wealthy homes, what we would call today spoiled brats. They each one of them take care of themselves, and they don't have patience for anybody else or to work on themselves. The Rebbe Marash was very, very hurt by this. He said, "Why were you sent there? You're sent there to learn chassidus with them, to teach chassidus, to develop their character, to feel for another yid." And that's the person who the Rebbe Marash was hurt by. And the Avos Yisrael yid was just feeling for another yid, even if he didn't solve any problems, feeling for another yid. The Rebbe spoke about Yosef HaTzadik when he was in jail. So one day he walks over to the Saramash, and he says, "Why are you guys so sad?" What do you mean, why are they sad? Why do you think they were sad? Sitting in jail, of course they're sad. But he notices something a little different from other days. Today they're a little more sad. And the Mefarshim explained that really Yosef could have gotten punished for even talking to them. It's almost like Shir Aleph trying to talk to Shir Gimel. You don't do that. So Yosef HaTzadik is going over to these ministers and asking them what's wrong. He had no permission to open his mouth to them. He was just supposed to clean their cell, and that's all. So he went out of his where he belonged just because he saw two people looked a little sadder that day than another day. And they told him why they looked sad. He interpreted the dreams. And the suf was that he ended up getting himself out of jail. He ended up saving the whole Mitzrayim. He ended up saving his whole family and the whole world. All because of what? Because of going over to somebody else. When you learn Chassidus, even basic Chassidus, you learn Chassidus, that's going to be the question. What's it doing for how I look at another Yid, another Bacher? Will I notice if another Bacher is in need? Will I have that courage to ask the guy, what's up, what's doing? Will I have the koiches to actually listen if he tells me? I may not be able to solve his problem, but just to notice, tell someone in Oholai, I notice something's up with this guy, maybe someone could talk to him. Notice somebody else's face. Learning Chassidus does that to a person. It sensitizes a person to another Yid. Okay, you know, there's... Akitzer, Bachrim. Because I don't have more what to say. So, the Iker Zach is that every Bacher over here should be Matzliach and Limud Achsidus and Darkei Achsidus. And they're two different things. Limud Achsidus is actually learning, and Darkei Achsidus you're going to gauge by how you treat another Bacher. I got jumped.
Rabbi Lipsker for the warme Wörter, gefragt die Indien, Darkei Achsidus of Abbas Yisrael. It's important to mention a few Bachrim who were up till 6 in the morning and made this beautiful Seudah possible. The Tmimim are as follows. Mamish worked the whole night. Sully Goldstein, Aaron Elbert, Levi Paris, Levi Elbert, Menachem Mendel Blooming, and also Hatamim Mendel Rutman. It's also very important to mention there's a very special Tamim who comes here, Tiltula de Gabre, Tiltula de Mamoina, and he already the second or third time this year. It's hard to see him because we have this beautiful stage over here, Tamim Levi Spalter, for all your one-man band needs. I'm sure that they will make sure that whatever's being given out will be brought to Levi also, a dessert. Achin Chaviv, and Take Chaviv. By the raise of hands, you get $5 if you answer this question, if I call on you, by the raise of hands. Who knows, what does the paragraph that we say every morning right after Adon Elam, what does the paragraph, Vayhi Achar Advarim Ha'ela, have to do with the story of Yutas Kislev? $10. Mayor? What? Alter Rebbe was tested. Serious nefesh. What? Avraham Avinu had 10 tests. Okay, but this is only one test. Someone has it over here? I see a hand raised. Rabbi Barnett? Who's that? Anybody know the answer? They wanted, Nachman needs 2 minutes. They wanted to put the Alter Rebbe in Cherim and the Katach Sidim in Cherim. And they gathered together. And they tried to get as many signatures as possible to put the Alter Rebbe in Cherim. They came to the Haik Talmud of the Gra. They came to the Haik Talmud of the Gra, Reb Chaim Volozhiner, and they told him, we want you to sign over here to put the Katach Sidim, the Alter Rebbe, in Cherim. And Reb Chaim Volozhiner said, I'm sorry, I will not sign. And I will tell you as follows. He said, why? Could be I'm missing a few pratim, but I want to rush to the Nekuda. Reb Chaim Volozhiner said that we learned from the paragraph of Vayhi Acher as follows. When it came time to calling upon a Yid to shecht another Yid, what does it say? V'alikim nisa es Avraham v'yemer elav Avraham. Who was the one who had the command to shecht another Yid? The pasuk says the Eibishter. Reb Chaim Volozhiner said, what happened when it was time to stop? Who stopped Avraham from actually bringing down the knife on Yitzchak? Are we finished? Who stopped the knife? The pasuk says, "Vayikra Elov Malach Min Hashamayim." Reb Chaim Volozhiner says, if you want to do something in Shechta Yid, that you need a tzivui right and straight from the Eibishter. So abhalten kann a Malach euch sagen. Und der Pfarrer Reb Chaim Volozhiner said to go and put another Yid in Chedim, unless you get a direct tzivui from the Eibishter, you're not going to put another Yid in Chedim. This is a inyan, a special inyan in Avos Yisrael. Avos Yisrael is Darkei Chassidus. The next Talmud who I'm about to call up to finish the Megillah of Yutas Kislev is a Bacher that I also had the Schuspunkt to spend 10 months with him. And just like Rabbi Lipsker said, I could say the same thing, that I spent many years, I didn't have Yutas Kislev in yeshiva. And there's nothing like being Yutas Kislev befrat to Bechlal, to Shimbachrim, and befrat Yutas Kislev, a Bacher, was Kemol, weet nicht sagen, noch a Wort, auf noch a Bacher, chas v'sholem schechten, aber er viel nicht schechten, gibt sich ab mit noch a Bacher, lernen a Sach Shois. Rabbi say, Darkei Achsidis is Avos Yisrael. As we know, it says in Hayom Yom, that the Baal Shem Tov said as Avos Yisrael, darf gehen ad mitzui ha-nefesh. We walk here in the hallways, we spend 12, 13, 14 hours a day amongst Bachrim. What are we thinking about, zwischen uns? Are we looking to Hebuf noch a Bacher? Chas v'sholem zogen epes to noch a Bacher that will put him down. Chas v'sholem. This is Rosh v'rishin in Darkei Achsidis is Avos Yisrael. We have to look to Hebuf noch a Bacher. Geben a Bacher noch a compliment. Looking out for a Bacher, seeing if a Bacher's a little behind, learning with him. Pashit caring about noch a Bacher. Das is Darkei Achsidis. Without any further ado, to finish off the Geula of the story of Yud Tes Kislev, we'd like to call upon Avraham Zushe Goldberg.
Jumped it. It's going to be very, very fast because people want to get out of here. The Geula was so fast that the Alter Rebbe didn't even have time to finish the pasuk Padah v'Shalom before he was told that he was going out of prison. So when they took him out of prison, they, by mistake, took him to the wrong house. They took him to the Misnagid's house instead of the Mordechai's house. And the Misnagid was harassing him to no end about his siddur and other mishigasim. When they came to get him, they finally rescued the Alter Rebbe said he's not going to leave until he finishes his tea that the Misnagid prepared for him, out of respect for his host, which is a tremendous lesson. And the Hasidim heard the news, and the news spread very, very fast, and Hasidim were rolling in the streets, the simcha like you've never seen before. And in the years that followed, it was made into a yomtiv, and the Alter Rebbe delivered the famous Maimer in Tafkov Samach. Days I think the Padah v'Shalom, and the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, he Reb Nachum, I think. He would chazer the story of Yutas Kislev every year, and when he would say the story about the arrest and the imprisonment, he would speak in a very, very low voice, very sad, good things. But when he would get to the part about the Geula, his face would light up, and he would speak about it with such an excitement and enthusiasm and simcha, and he would say it in detail. And if you came late, he would start again from the beginning. And because this was so important to him, and it's important to every chassid this yontif of Yutas Kislev, especially the minhag of eating shvarza kasha on Yutas Kislev, and it also has been customary among chassidim. This is how we'll finish off, I guess, to wish each other Good Yom Tov, or Shana Taiva, Villimud Achsidis, Vidarchi Achsidis, Tikasemu, Shechasemu. Amen. Now. Shiach now.
I want to mention that Avraham Zushe Goldberg lives on Shlichus in Long Island, and the Shabbos clothes are in Long Island. When hat gebracht, nach Shabbos, hat gebracht da, sein Shabbos Kleider, kede as Yutes Kislev, so man gave mit Shabbos Kleider.
We are now going to bench, important part of the program. There is a Chalukas Shas paper going around. Everybody should please try and take part. But I want especially Shir Beis to hear this last word. The Friedrich Rebbe said there's 3 types of Chassidim. Chassidik Gezhe, Chassidik Hanusach, and Chassidik Chabad. Chassidik Gezhe is, why am I a Chassid? Because I have ancestry. Chassidik Hanusach is, why am I a Chassid? Because I davened Tilas Hashem, the Nusach, Rebbe was Mechaber. But then there's Chassidik Chabad. What is a Chassid Chabad? Imitzirvus, learned Chassidus. Al Kopanim, Nachman, Rebbe Asher's Sonkin said that if there was no Yintas Kislev on the Shgiven Kim Welt, without any further ado, we'll call upon the entire Niskan Manal, Mechaber Zayin with bench. Don't forget, there's a Chalukas Shas. Noch ein Mensch mit seinem Meide, noch meine mit seinen Nikudim, und Hemmschicha Farbrengen. Shira Mahalai
Rabbi Sai, Mendels, Shimon in Rebbe, he Shimon in Rebbe, Padah, Monon Rabbi Sai, Rosh,
Why is it so dark? It's like it's dark.
see him?
There's gonna be a video.
Timecodes